All right. Welcome to my show. Pleasure to have Mr. Larry Johnson with me once again. Thanks for coming on. We're going to discuss a few things about the geopolitical situation from my Swedish perspective and from your perspective as an American and also as a former CIA advisor, I guess.
Right, right. CIA officer.
CIA officer. Okay, okay.
Yes.
My first question is around this guy, the Secretary General of NATO. Is a Norwegian guy named Jens Stoltenberg. Uh, he's been out speaking to the media recently, and he's basically repeating what Donald Trump said in South Carolina the other day, that all the NATO member countries in Europe needs to weaponize, needs to put an effort in to producing weapons of their own. Uh, and I guess that my question really is this guy, Stoltenberg, he's a politician. He's not, as far as I know, has no military experience
Hmm.
whatsoever. Maybe he did some conscript time in the peaceful country of Norway. I don't know. But he's been a high politician before in his career, and he's been Secretary General of NATO for, I think, 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah.
Where is he taking his orders from? Well, you
Yeah.
haven't.
This it is. NATO is an anachronism. It
Mhm.
really shouldn't exist. Its reason for being, the raison d'être, uh, occurred or came to an end in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Right.
NATO had originally been conceived of as a defensive organization to prevent a Soviet invasion of Europe, which the Soviets had no intention of invading Europe. Yeah, they took over and dominated Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Bulgaria, former Yugoslavia, because they were concerned about the security on their western border.
Right.
They, they had been victimized so many times in their history with invasions from the west. So they did it, and they were brutal in some cases, but they were never going to recreate the March on Paris that occurred in the aftermath of the Napoleon's invasion of Russia back in 1812, was it?
Yeah. Around then.
So now we're witnessing this expansion of NATO, ostensibly to deal with, quote, the Russian threat. And depending on the day, they can't get their damn story straight. I mean, one day we're told they got terrible military leadership. They're using ancient, outdated equipment. They're incompetent. They can't recruit enough soldiers. They're barely hanging on. In short, as a military, they suck.
Hmm.
Oh, and yet, then the next day, oh my God, the Russians are coming. We we gotta build up. Let everybody get together. Bring your guns. The Russians are coming. Now,
Yeah.
which is it?
Yeah. It's a
They're
very good
either
point.
incompetent,
Yeah.
or they're Darth Vader and the Star Troop, the Star Troopers gonna take over with the Death Star. Okay, so let me suggest that both are total bullshit. You know, Russia today has one of the more modern armies in the world. It has now the most experienced army in the world in conducting combined arms against a near peer. Um, the United States does not have that. All the United
We lost
to
connection.
Ukraine is in sort of a, you know, having that vicarious experience, the voyeur, watching, not doing, but watching. And
Right.
then, you know, getting their titillation through that, oh, look how great we are. And, Russia is beating not just Ukraine, it's beating NATO.
Mm.
So here's NATO now faced with its own incompetence.
Mm.
Not a one of its very expensive weapon systems have proved to be effective on the ground in Ukraine in terms of changing the tactical situation in favor of Ukraine.
Yeah.
The HIMARS 2 years ago, Scott Ritter and I got into, a little bit of a difference of opinion. He called the HIMARS a game changer. I said, not a game changer. It's a new weapon. It's going to have an effect for some period of time, but it's not going to change. It doesn't change the reality that Russia's got 160 million people and Ukraine's got 25 million.
Mm.
Numbers. It doesn't change the fact that Russia has intact military bases and has far more recruits than Ukraine. It doesn't change the fact that Russia has more artillery pieces, more tanks, more ammunition for the artillery pieces, more aircraft, more air defense, more rockets, more missiles,
Mm.
and Russia has hypersonic missiles, which the West does not have.
Exactly.
And yet, in spite of all of that, they're maintaining that, oh yeah, Ukraine's going to beat Russia.
Mm.
Not going to happen.
One thing that Stoltenberg said to the German newspaper Die Welt, meaning the world, which is a
Yeah,
great newspaper in Germany, I guess, that if Ukraine should lose, Russia will invade the rest of the world.
yeah,
You know,
it's crazy. You
yeah.
know,
You listen to,
there's only one, look, there's only one country out there that's invading the rest of the world.
yeah,
Can you
United
name it?
United States.
Ah, good guess. And people, well, that's not true. Oh, really? Let's just go ask the people of Vietnam and Panama
Yeah,
and Grenada and Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan
yeah,
and Serbia. And,
exactly.
go down the list.
Mhm.
The United States, out of all countries in the world, is the most aggressive military power,
Mhm.
unilaterally attacking other countries outside the bounds of international law. And it's my country, and I consider myself a patriot. I come from a long line of patriots. I have over 28 ancestors who fought to free this country from the rule of the British king. But we got to step back and take stock of ourselves. We can't. The United States it's out of control, absolutely out of control. What it's doing, and in terms of causing death and mayhem,
Yeah,
and it needs to stop. And so, in this regard, we're trying to paint Russia as the ultimate bad guy, completely ignoring what the United States and Great Britain did in fomenting the 2014 Maidan coup,
right.
which ousted the legitimately elected President Yushchenko,
Mhm.
and then replaced it with someone who was more favorably disposed towards the West. That immediately, with the Rada, passed laws outlawing even the speaking of Russian in the Donbass, made people who have historic ties to Russia, going back not just a few years, but hundreds of years,
Right.
made them an enemy,
Yeah.
and then fomented a civil war and armed and equipped Ukrainian military units. And every year from 2015 on, NATO and the U.S. European Command were conducting military exercises with Ukraine. And the enemy in those exercises was always Russia.
Mm.
That was being done on Russia's border. I know of no other country in the world that would allow a foreign enemy to conduct military exercises on its border and would just sit back quietly and do nothing.
Yeah. Well, hell, they trained Ukrainian soldiers in Sweden, amongst others, and
Mm-hmm.
Great Britain also. Leads me to my next question as well. You don't have to answer this, Larry, if you feel it's a little bit too forward, but a friend of mine that we do this show every day together called the Lunch Club, in Swedish Lunchklubben, uh,
Lunchklubben, huh?
meaning the club. Uh,
Yeah.
how influential in all of this is the CIA in decisions that are made by the White House and ultimately Pentagon and the NATO? How influential would you say the CIA is in all of this?
Um, I don't have firsthand knowledge, so all I can offer is an informed guess.
All right.
Um, the CIA does play a critical role in U.S. policy in Ukraine. It is involved working directly with their intelligence service, with Budanov. They also, at one point, according to public sources I've seen, used they got a paramilitary section within CIA Special Activities Division,
Okay.
which the acronym SAD
All
is
right. SAD.
triste, what in Spanish, sad. But they were at one point allegedly dealing directly with the Ukrainian military as well. And again, some very competent people in that organization in terms of can they shoot? Well, yes. Are they? Uh, but they're not these are not general officers. They're not people with experience in military general staff and command schools.
Hmm.
And so they have zero experience with these kinds of combined arms. The United States has fought, you know, goat herders in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yeah, we haven't faced a real army since probably the North Vietnamese army in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Prior to that, North Korea with the Chinese. But so the United States has an entire military that's been grown up doing what I call the equivalent of beating up kids in wheelchairs. You know, we militarily outmatch Iraq and Afghanistan, but despite having more soldiers, more sophisticated equipment, air power, total control of the air, artillery rounds, long range munitions with rockets, etc., we still couldn't control and conquer Afghanistan.
Right.
And instead of stepping back, going, why is that? And they'll always go, well, it's just like Vietnam. The politicians didn't have the will. All we needed to do was get the American people, and yeah, I'll put 2 million people in there. Not, it's just stop with the
Yeah.
insanity. There's no threat out there right now that will justify mobilizing America into a military society to confront threats which don't exist.
Exactly.
So, it's just,
Oh, we said this on our show today. We discussed a little bit what Stoltenberg had said to the media. Uh, the threat is really NATO, was our
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. If you just decide to we cancel NATO, then there wouldn't be any threat anywhere, really. But of course, it's very important for the United States of America to have this control over partners in overseas from your geographical perspective. So another thing, we found out very little about it, but it seems that Iran, for example, is a very formidable military force. And there's talks about, not exactly now, but it's been over the last few weeks, talks about what's going on in Yemen with the Houthis and all this
yeah,
rockets in the Red Sea and those straits leading up to the Suez Canal, that the United States is blaming Iran for financing and orchestrating the Houthis in Yemen and the Hezbollah in Lebanon, and that what was it? Was it Lindsey Graham that said we got to go and beat them? We got to go to the Iranians and blow them
Yeah.
off of the map.
Yeah, he wants to go directly into Iran. That's yeah.
Yeah.
Not him. He wants to send somebody else's son or daughter. Not him, by God. You know, he wants to sit back in the comfort of a secure bunker.
Yes,
He wants
exactly.
to send other people's children to die,
Right.
you know.
But he actually said those things. I saw it
Yeah,
myself,
yeah, yeah.
mainstream from the United States. Oh, that's totally crazy, in my opinion. I mean, I I understand that Iran is not to play with. They have it's a Muslim extremist country, but they're developed quite a lot, despite, I should say, their political weirdness. So they are a formidable military force to be reckoned with, as far as I
But
understand.
yeah, I mean, so the mullahs came in and imposed a very social conservative rule,
Yeah.
against homosexuality, against drinking of alcohol,
Mm,
very, very much like the Puritans of old and
yeah.
out of England. But the West conveniently ignores or develops um, Alzheimer's disease without, when it comes to refusing to acknowledge its own responsibility for what has occurred in Iran. It's the United States likes to portray that Iran hates us because of our freedoms. They hate us because of our democracy. They hate us because we love Jesus, and they don't.
Mm,
And then, okay, well, then why does Iran have such good relations with Russia, which
exactly.
is an Eastern Orthodox Christian country? Uh, it boils down to one very simple reason. Russia has never been involved with overthrowing a government in Iran. Russia has never been involved with facilitating the creation, training of a security service, Savak, that was torturing and killing Iranian civilians. Um, Russia was never involved with arming Iran and arming Iraq in order to carry out, to weaken both.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there's ample reasons for Iran's animus towards the West,
Yeah.
and Iran didn't just start at carrying out terrorist attacks against the United States without any context or any background.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, they remember it was because of Ronald Reagan's decision to start lobbing shells into the Baikal Valley back in 1983, I guess 82 and 83,
Right.
that this Palestinian fellow tied to Iran by the name of Vidmak Mugnia organized the bombing of the U.S. Marine barracks and the French barracks that were based in Beirut, killed them, killed a number of those soldiers, and then blew up the U.S. embassy. And it
Yeah.
was it was a retaliation. So I think actually we're moving into an era where we're going to see Iran start to retaliate like it did more than 40 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. History always repeats itself, and nobody learns from it, it seems. Uh, Another thing that's going on that's closer to Scandinavia, where I'm based, is that I read today that, first of all, Finland got a new prime minister, uh,
Yeah, I saw him. He's a sweetheart.
Alexander Stubb. He is a banker, banking career. He's avid visitor to the World Economic Forum. He's a globalist. He's pro NATO and anti Russian. That's one thing. And of course, Finland is a recent new member, which has a land border towards Russia. In kilometers is about 1,300 kilometer land border to
Yeah.
Russia. So, and they have a history with Russia since World War II and the Winter Wars and all that. So that is interesting. And another thing was that the Baltic countries, which also borders Belarus and Russia,
Right.
Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they decided now to build 600 bunkers on the border. Estonia has a 330-kilometer border directly to Russia, which is approximately adjacent to St. Petersburg, which is the second largest city in Russia, which also has coastline to the Baltic Sea. 600 new bunkers because they expect an invasion from Russia. Now, how do you figure what if, who told them that? You know,
Yeah,
did they not listen to Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin on the interview that was recently published with all these views? I mean, and it was
right.
translated into Estonian and into the Baltic languages. It was translated into Swedish, Turkish, Hindu, Arabic. It's got a billion views. They,
Yeah, yeah.
they didn't listen to what Putin said. Yeah, I have no interest in the Baltics. I have no interest in Poland. I have no interest in the rest of Europe. I'm interested in protecting my people.
Yeah. Yeah,
Basically,
no, this is we're trying. NATO and the West are busy trying to create a threat.
mm,
Because one of the keys is you have got to have an external enemy that will justify the spending trillions of dollars on defense systems
mm,
that don't necessarily work and aren't necessarily relevant anymore. But it's considered as sort of an essential part of the economy.
mhm,
Uh, this is the refusal to accept what both was accomplished by the Putin Carlson interview.
yeah,
You know, I just checked, 197 million people,
on only his.
197 million views. Now,
Yeah,
that's not as many as watched the funeral of Princess Diana. I guess that was like 2.5 billion people watched that. And like a final, the World Cup finals, I'm sure that attracts more than a billion. But when you compare that with the average viewers on any of the US television stations,
right.
the, the largest viewer for news programs, example, is ABC television. Just recently had 8 million people watching.
Okay.
Oh man, they were excited about that. When you look at ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, but all of their number one highest rated shows, count up the viewers. Total viewers for all of those programs, including late night television, top news shows, 32 million people in total. And that's just for US viewers.
Right.
Well, that's nothing. I
Yeah,
mean, that's nothing.
bear in
Um,
mind also that uh, the interview when it was aired on Tucker Carlson's X account with
yeah,
197 million, it was not subtitled. It was just the English spoken voices,
right, right.
which
Yeah.
limits the amount of people that actually understand what was said. But the
Yeah,
Russian television or Russia Today (RT), they did a survey when they compared with all of the translated and re what do you call it,
re,
resubmitted
yeah,
versions,
or rebroadcast. Yeah.
rebroadcasted exactly. They came to it's a billion or
Yeah,
what?
I wouldn't doubt that. I,
Hmm,
I, I wouldn't doubt that. It's gotten far more when you factor in all the international coverage, all the different social media
right,
platforms. I know that like I saw one channel on YouTube alone that had over a million viewers.
right,
So the anger at Putin and Carlson, what this demonstrates is the West has lost control. The legacy media is no longer in control of the narrative. They try to be.
hmm,
They try to shout down, shut down anybody who would come out with an opinion that's different from what these
hmm,
globalists want to say.
yeah,
But, Tucker and through his voice, he's now really a powerful media force of his own. And
yeah.
he doesn't have this enormous corporate structure behind him. He really is free to
Hmm.
pronounce and to speak out.
I think it's a wonderful thing. Um, in Sweden, of course, we have state controlled. and oligarch controlled media. The private media is owned by one family, basically called the Bonnier family, and then
Hmm.
we have the state-controlled television, which is so powerful with a huge tax-funded budget of about 9 billion Swedish kroners a year, which is huge for the small country. And all they do, talking about NATO and things like that, is saying, well, our oligarch family, Wallenberg, which owns the Saab industrial complex that produces our fighter jets and the munitions and the weapon
Right,
systems,
right.
are Swedish, their stock is now through the roof.
Hmm.
Yay!
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
How,
what
how
they
how many people how many people live in Sweden? I haven't
about
looked that
10
up.
million, 10 million.
10 million. Okay. So Tucker got the equivalent viewer equivalent of at least, according to Twitter, at least 20 Swedes. Okay? Let that sink in. People ought to think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, it's just what we're witnessing is this madness, this bloodlust
Yeah.
is the only way I can describe it. To
You know, some of the Swedish major newspapers in this small, tiny country, before the interview was published, when it was known that it was going to happen, they went out and wrote, well, Putin lies 4 times in 4 minutes. They haven't seen the interview, it hasn't been published. And
right.
and then, of course, that goes us via Reuters and Associated Press, and in Sweden, it's the TT. It's called the news agency, which is owned by the oligarch family Bonnier, and repeats it. Yeah,
Hmm.
Putin lied 4 times in 4 minutes in the interview with Tucker Carlson, and they haven't seen it. It wasn't published.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this isn't about truth. This is about controlling the message, trying to control what people hear and see.
Hmm.
And that is the internet is like a two-edged sword. It both cuts positive and cuts negative.
Yeah,
But on the positive side, it has become an alternative platform for information that you're no longer dependent upon cable television, for example.
yeah,
The proliferation of streaming services has really created so much content. Maybe the biggest problem is now people have too many choices.
yeah. It's
You
a
have to you have so much you can watch, and there's a limit to what you can watch in
yeah,
one day.
yeah. I get overwhelmed a lot. I get in my show, the Lunch Club, man, with my colleague Øystein Rønne. He's Swede, but he lives in Denmark. So we pick up a little things and we do a daily show for about 20 minutes. And it's possible to do that through the internet. And we don't
Hmm.
use expensive equipment. We have no staff. I have a regular job on the side, but we still manage to do a show every day. And it's enormously popular in Sweden. It doesn't get the ratings of, let's say, Redacted or Napolitano's show or a Danny Hagfong because we have a Swedish audience and we speak in
Yeah,
Swedish uh,
right, right.
on the show. But I get overwhelmed. I get so many mails with people. Have you seen this? A link to some program and a link to this and a link to this. I don't have the time of day to consume all of that because it's
Yeah, I
overwhelming.
know I experienced the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you, and I appreciate so much. I understand because you participated in these larger shows many, many times, Redacted, uh, Judging Freedom, and so on, with huge audiences compared to what we have here in Sweden. But I've managed to get Douglas McGregor on a couple of times,
Hmm.
and you. So I'm deeply appreciated and I know my viewers appreciate it a lot. And we
Right.
get maybe 10, 14, 15,000 views on a show like this, but that's a high percentage of the possible audience that I have.
Hmm.
So it's not bad for being a small country with 10 million.
Yeah. Well, I try to get my voice out around the world, and I've been fortunate in that regard.
That is very, very good. I thought I would get you out on a final question. I think it's about 30 minutes now. Do you see an end to the conflict in the Middle East? Any idea how that could be resolved without Israel annihilating the Palestinians, which is what Netanyahu says he will do? Or is there some kind of solution to this? What do you think?
Well, in theory, there is. In practical reality, there is not. The
Mhm.
theoretical solution is pretty simple. The United States tells Israel, you're going to open up negotiations with the Palestinians. You're going to remove your settlers from Palestinian land,
From the West Bank,
the West Bank and Gaza.
right?
And we will enter into a security agreement with you to protect and defend you, but you're no longer going into those territories, and the Palestinians must be granted the right to create their own state without you interfering in any way with their affairs.
Uh, uh,
And if you don't do that, you're not going to get another dime from us, not
right.
a single cent, and we will not militarily come to your assistance.
Mm.
Now, theoretically, that could be done,
Yep.
but that's why I say practically, it's not going to happen.
Mm.
Uh, the Jewish influence through the American Israeli Political Action Committee is so great, so powerful that it would be any politician would be committing suicide that attempted to advocate that or try to do it.
Mm.
I wish it was different, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, what I think is we're going to continue to go down this road of destruction,
Yeah.
and you're going to see that um, Israel will continue to kill, murder Palestinians. It's always odd that Israel portrays this as a life and death struggle for itself, claiming that it's the victim of terrorism. But all you have to do is look at the actual number of Israelis killed by Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the number of Palestinians killed by Israelis.
Yeah.
The Palestinians are dying at a rate of about 20 to 1
Yeah.
compared to what happens to the Israelis.
Mhm.
It's not even close.
Yeah.
So this is again another example where they're using the excuse of the Holocaust to
Yeah.
justify creating a new Holocaust.
Mm.
And unfortunately, right now, the only country in the world that has really stood up and fought back on behalf of the Palestinians is Yemen, the Houthis.
Yeah.
Everybody else talks a good game but doesn't do much.
Yeah. That's quite surprising to me as well because I mean, it's an Arab world in that geographical region. I mean, we have Egypt, we have Saudi Arabia, Qatar, are small, but they're rich. Um, yeah, it's amazing. Now, but it's interesting to hear your voice on that, the theoretical but non-practical
Yeah.
solution. Yeah,
So,
I agree with you. That was a new aspect for me, and I appreciate it. All right. Anything else before we?
no, I think there will always be more to talk about,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
appreciate it. And we probably, if you can, I'll be happy to do another program with you anytime we see some new developments and questions, of course, arises in my head that I would like to ask you. So
Sure.
look forward to the next time, and thanks for today, then, Larry.
Okay. Thank you, Hagen.